Hi, this is Jethro Nunn from UE Marine. I'm just making a short video about replacing the clutch bearing on this 2.3 horse Honda Outboard. Basically what the story is it starts and runs, but even with full throttle the prop won't spin. So from what I gather, the clutch bearing must be seized, so I'm pulling it apart and having a look at that. So far it's been a pretty simple exercise. You just got to take the fuel tank off first, just two screws on the top, then take the pull starter off, which I've left attached to the lid here, and then this cover comes off. Okay, it's all pretty straightforward, but the next step from what I see here is that I'm going to need to take the bottom off. You have to actually pull the engine out to get access to that clutch bearing. So rather than show you unscrewing a whole lot of screws, there's three bolts on the bottom here, which I'm going to unscrew, and then we'll go to the next phase. Okay, so I have taken those three nuts out and pulled the engine off the spline, as you can see. And so this is what we've got now. So that little pipe hanging down is the exhaust pipe. And now I hope you can see under here, but I've got to get these extra 4 bolts out there so that I can get to the clutch. That's the clutch in there. But before I do that, I've got to take off this handle to make sure that we can clear this plastic casing that the whole thing's enclosed in. Wow, that is filthy and corroded. No wonder it's seized. So I've soaked it with CRC, and I've got to try and get that little circlip. There's 2 little circlips in there, which I hope you can see, but boy, they're going to be really tight in there given how much rust and everything is. But anyway, if we're going to get the job done, that's the only way I can do it. Okay, so I got that little circlip out with a pair of circlip pliers, and the theory then is that I should be able to turn this upside down and hit it out, and the bearing and the clutch outer will come out. But that is the theory, and unfortunately I think this thing is so corroded and stuck in there where the bearing sits inside that clutch housing that nothing's going to get it out. I've tried CRC, I've been hitting it with a hammer. All I've succeeded in doing is damaging the bearing inside, which is fine. I was going to replace the bearing, but cannot get the rest out. So what I've ended up doing is I've gone and bought the new parts from Honda. Actually got them off a Japanese website called Yumbo, and it was about 60% of the price of what I would have bought them for otherwise, and that was inclusive of postage and so on. And so now I have the new seal, which is just here, okay, and I'll be able to knock that down in there with a 14mm socket to get the water seal in there, and then that's what the bearing and the circlip looks like, the new one. And so that'll go back into there, and again, I mean, I'll grease the outside of here, and then get an appropriate size socket or something and whack that in, having not the proper tools to do it, I suppose. But yeah, so definitely could not get that in, and you can understand how after a while this would be, the bearing would just be corroded in there, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to hit that out. I've applied heat, I've tried everything without success. Okay, so we've got the circlip in and the clutch housing's all sweet, so now I'll just put it back into the bottom of this plastic housing, and we've got the engine put back on the top there, and it's just the 4 bolts down there that holds that in. So now I just need to make sure I get a bit of grease on the water seal there. Honda recommends that I put some oil on the end of the exhaust pipe there, and of course just before I go to the stage of putting the whole motor back on, I just want to grease the top of that spline, and from then on obviously it's just the reversal of putting the whole thing back together, how I pulled it apart, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Okay, so I've got it all back together now. I just wanted to mention before I crank it over that I also cleaned up the other side of the clutch. So sanded the pads lightly, made sure they were within spec. There was plenty of meat on the pads, so not a problem. And just cleaned any corrosion off the spring and made sure that that was free and moving. So ready to crank it over now and make sure that's all okay.